Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Jeff. I'm 23 years old, and for the last 4 years, I've carried my family on my back, without thanks, without recognition, and without a clue about the storm that was waiting for me. It all started with a single bounced mortgage payment. I was used to covering it. Hell, I'd been doing it since I turned 19. The lakehouse in Montpelier, Vermont, wasn't just some summer getaway. It was my mother's dream, and after she passed when I was 17, it became the one thing keeping our family together. Or at least that's what I told myself. My dad, Richard, called me like clockwork every month. "Hey Jeff, can you spot the payment this time? Business is a little tight again." Always said with a half laugh like it was no big deal. But it was. Because I was grinding 2 jobs. Night shifts at a tire shop and weekend stints doing yard work for rich families, while carrying a full load of mechanical engineering courses at UVM. Meanwhile, my younger sister Lily was living like a queen. At 21, she'd never held a job, never paid rent, and never skipped a shopping trip. Every weekend she was posting selfies from some new brunch spot, or modeling designer bags like she was being paid to advertise them. Spoiler alert, she wasn't. At first, I convinced myself she was just figuring things out. But that illusion shattered when Dad called me sounding more chipper than usual. "Big things coming, son. Lily's stepping up. Finally going to help with expenses around here." I didn't believe it then. Turns out, I wasn't even close to how deep this rabbit hole went. The lake house had been in our family for 17 years. I remember the first time we saw it. I was 6. Mom cried when we walked in, happy tears. She said it was going to be our sanctuary. And it was for a while. Summer nights filled with campfires and laughter. Winters curled up inside playing board games by the fire. But after Mom died, Dad buried himself in work, or what was left of it. His construction company took a hit, and instead of making real changes, he leaned on me. Told me I was the man of the house now. I took that seriously. Too seriously. By the time I was a freshman in college, I was already sending money home every month. "Just for a bit," Dad said. "Until we stabilize." That was 4 years ago. Now, here's where the betrayal begins to rear its ugly head. One October night, while I was eating instant noodles in my freezing apartment, Dad called again. "Jeff, I did something big for your sister," he said, voice practically glowing. He had set up a $600,000 trust fund for Lily. My fork hit the counter. "I finally figured out how to honor your mother's wishes," he continued like he expected applause. "She always wanted Lily to have a strong start. This fund, this is it." I couldn't breathe. Not just because of the number, but because of what it meant. I had sent over $65,000 to cover mortgage payments, property taxes, utilities, even repair costs from the time Lily's friends broke the sliding door during one of their dock parties. And now I was finding out she had over $500,000, and I had nothing but debt. "So, she's going to help with the house now?" I asked, barely containing my disbelief. "Jeff," Dad said, chuckling like I was being ridiculous, "the fund's hers. It's her start in life. I'm sure she'll help out in other ways." Other ways? Meanwhile, Lily was flaunting her new BMW convertible online, her caption, "Trust fund baby mode, activated thanks Daddy." I stared at that photo until my phone went dark. Something inside me cracked that night. Mom had wanted to care for both of us. But it was clear, Dad only remembered half of her wish. For the first time since I was 17, I skipped the mortgage transfer. And that was the beginning of everything. The text came in at 7:42 a.m. the next morning. "Dad, mortgage bounced. What happened? Can you send it today?" No greeting. No, "Hope you're well." Just panic in pixel form. I stared at the message while walking to my engineering lab. My body moved on autopilot, but my mind was somewhere else. I was supposed to feel guilty, at least that's how he trained me. But this time something was different. I felt tired. Tired of being the only one who cared about keeping our family above water. Tired of bending until I snapped. Still, I hesitated before replying. "I thought Lily's trust could handle family stuff now. Isn't that what you said?" No response. 10 minutes later my phone rang. Dad. I didn't answer. He called again. Then again. I let it ring. I spent the whole day trying to focus on torque calculations and design theory, but my thoughts kept drifting back to the lake house. It wasn't just a building to me, it was memories. It was Mom. And now it was going to fall apart because I stopped being the family's silent ATM. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling while the radiator in my apartment hissed and clanked. I hadn't turned the heat up in weeks to save money. I was down to 3 cans of soup and a half bag of rice. My winter coat zipper was broken, and I'd been using safety pins to keep it closed. Meanwhile, Lily had posted a video from Miami. She was poolside in a resort suite, sipping something with a gold straw. The caption said, "Self-care is an investment, face blowing a kiss, airplane money with wings." I felt my throat tighten. I hated her in that moment. Not because she had money, but because she had freedom. And I had nothing but responsibilities shoved on me since the moment Mom died. Dad finally left me a voicemail. "I don't know what kind of message you're trying to send, Jeff, but you need to grow up. This house is all we have left of your mother. If you're willing to let that go, maybe you're not the son I thought you were." That one hurt. Because he knew exactly where to strike, right in the wound Mom's death left behind. But instead of breaking me, it hardened me. I didn't reply. 2 days later, I got a call from Uncle Ray, Dad's older brother. We hadn't spoken in months. He said Dad was trying to get him to float the house for a bit. I could hear the disbelief in his voice. "Jeff, is it true your sister got a trust fund?" "Yeah," I said quietly. 600 grand. There was a pause. Then, "And your dad's been having you cover the mortgage?" "Since I was 19. A long silence. "Son, that's not just messed up. That's a scam in a tuxedo." Turns out, Uncle Ray had also lent Dad money a while back, during the construction company's nosedive. Dad had promised to pay him back, once the family got on solid footing. That was 2 years ago. "You need to look out for yourself," he told me. "Your dad's living in some fantasy where Lily's still 10 and you're the family handyman. But she's blowing money like a rapper and he's letting her." I thanked him and hung up, but something started gnawing at me. How many others had Dad leaned on? I pulled out my files, something I kept obsessively organized since freshman year, and calculated everything I'd sent to cover the mortgage, utilities, and repairs. The number was sickening. $68,230.12. Money I could have used to finish school without debt. Money that could have bought me a decent car, a warm apartment, a better life. And then, the knock came. It was a Friday evening. I'd just come back from my landscaping job. My hands still smelled like fertilizer and sweat. I opened the door and there stood Lily. Gucci sunglasses on her head. A Louis Vuitton duffel at her feet. "I need to crash here for a bit," she said breezily, brushing past me like she owned the place. "What? Why?" She flopped down on my futon and pulled out her phone. "Dad says you're being petty. We need to talk like grown-ups." "Grown-ups?" I echoed. "You mean the ones paying your bills?" She looked up, unbothered. "I get it, you're mad. But like, the trust fund wasn't against you. It was Mom's wish. Mom wanted both of us to have something," I said. "Not for you to buy a $50,000 car and post about it like a joke." She rolled her eyes. "You always make everything so dramatic. And you make everything about yourself." She stood. "So what, now you're cutting us off? Letting the house go to foreclosure?" "I've been supporting that place for 4 years, I snapped. "And you, what have you done? Throw parties? Burn through a fortune in 6 weeks." That's when she said it. "You're jealous. Always have been. Just admit it." My heart went ice cold. She didn't come from a place of ignorance. She came from entitlement. Lily didn't think I helped the family. She thought it was my role. That night, she left in a huff after I refused to give her rent money, just for a week. The next morning, the bank called. They wanted to notify me, since I was listed as a co-borrower on the mortgage. I nearly dropped the phone. "I'm sorry, what?" I asked. "Yes," the woman said kindly. "Your father listed you as a co-borrower on the second mortgage refinance 2 years ago. Didn't you sign those documents?" No, I did not." The despair didn't just hit me. It gutted me. Dad had forged my signature or snuck me in without proper consent. Something shady, and now I was legally entangled in this mess. The foreclosure proceedings would destroy my credit, put my future at risk, maybe even ruin job prospects after graduation. And Lily? Still in Miami, sipping cocktails with hashtags like #blessed and #trustfund vibes. That night, I stared at my ceiling again. Only this time, I wasn't just angry. I was done. Done being the obedient son. Done sacrificing for a family that saw me as a disposable wallet. Done letting guilt drown me. And so, I made a decision. No more despair. No more denial. It was time to dig into the truth. And maybe, just maybe, it was time for me to rewrite the ending. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of guilt. But because my mind wouldn't stop replaying one thought. He forged my name. My own father. The man who'd once taught me how to ride a bike. The man who stood at Mom's funeral pretending we'd stay strong together. That same man had dragged me into a mortgage scam behind my back, and then had the audacity to call me selfish when I stopped paying for his mistakes. By morning I had a plan. I skipped class and went straight to the county clerk's office in Montpelier. I'd never set foot in a legal building before, but I'd Googled enough to know I needed the mortgage and property title documents for the lakehouse. The clerk, a kind woman named Karen, printed everything out for me after I showed ID and explained I was listed as a party on the deed. And there it was. Plain as daylight. My signature. Dated 2 years ago. Except I had never signed it. The signature was a poor attempt at forgery. It mimicked my handwriting from when I was 15. Back when I used to loop the J in Jeff with a tail like a fishhook. I hadn't signed anything like that since Mom died. But to the bank? It was official. That's when I realized I'd been legally entangled in this disaster for years, and I didn't even know it. My father had used me. Not just emotionally, but financially, legally. I scanned the rest of the documents and saw something that nearly made me vomit. CO borrower is liable in the event of default. My heart started pounding. Not only had I been unknowingly tied to this collapsing house of cards, but if the foreclosure went through, my credit would be destroyed for a property I didn't even control. Suddenly, a quiet, calculated rage bloomed in my chest. This wasn't neglect. This wasn't favoritism. This was fraud. And it got worse. I took the folder and headed to the university's legal aid clinic, which provided free assistance for students in financial hardship. I met with a grad student intern named Cynthia who took one look at my documents and called her supervisor, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Hargrove, a licensed attorney and adjunct professor. Patricia reviewed everything in silence, then looked up and said flatly, "This isn't just unethical. It might be criminal." My mouth was dry. "You mean he could go to jail?" She shook her head slowly. "Not unless you press charges. But this document could open the door for a civil lawsuit, especially if the bank acted without verifying your involvement. You never signed this." I nodded. He said it was just a reference. I didn't know I was tied to the actual loan. Patricia tapped her pen on the desk. "We'll pull credit reports, contact the mortgage lender for a verification of process, and request original documentation. If your signature was forged, we have leverage." Leverage. For the first time in 4 years, I felt like I wasn't just drowning in someone else's mess. I had something to fight with. That night, I started digging through Mom's old files, the ones she'd kept in a locked cabinet before she passed. I'd taken them with me after her funeral, a quiet act of preservation. Inside, I found her will, a document Dad never talked about. And what I read changed everything. Upon my passing, the lake house shall be considered marital property. Half shall go to my spouse, and the other half shall be split evenly between my children upon their 21st birthdays. I froze. Split. Evenly. Between me and Lily. I read it again to be sure. Dad had no right to treat the lake house like it was entirely his. He had no legal basis to list me as a co-borrower without consent. And worst of all, he had violated Mom's will by making decisions without informing either of us. I made copies of everything. Sent them to Patricia. Her response came in under an hour. "Jeff, this changes everything. Not only do you have a claim to part of the house, but your father has misrepresented ownership to the bank. We could potentially challenge the foreclosure process and even file an injunction." A tiny ember of power flared in me. I wasn't the victim anymore. Lily's trust fund? Built off what should have been shared inheritance. That money came from liquidating Mom's life insurance, also intended for both of us. Dad had drained it, gave it all to her, and expected me to be fine. Like a good little son. No more. I started keeping notes, detailed timelines, copies of transactions, statements from the bank, even Lily's social posts showing extravagant spending. I gathered it like ammunition. And then something happened I didn't expect. Lily called me. She was crying. I'm in trouble," she stammered. Of course she was. The trust fund wasn't bottomless. Turns out, she'd burned through over $400,000 in 3 months. A car, 2 luxury trips, designer clothes, a failed investment in some influencer's wellness brand that turned out to be a scam. "I need help," she whispered. "Dad says you cut us off." I laughed. Bitter and hollow. "Cut you off? I was never included." "I didn't know," she sniffled. "I didn't ask for this." "No," I said calmly. "But you took it. And you watched me struggle while you lived like royalty." Silence. "Please," she finally whispered. "I can't even afford next month's rent." I almost pitied her. But I also remembered eating dry rice with soy sauce while she posted lobster dinners with champagne emojis. I hung up. Later that week, I met with Patricia again. She had a new folder in hand, bank verification records. And a bombshell. "Jeff," she said, setting the folder down. "Your dad has a private account. It was receiving monthly payments from a property management firm, $3,500 each month." I blinked. "What?" "He was renting the lake house on the side for seasonal income. Never told you. Never declared it when requesting money from you." I felt like I was going to explode. He'd been profiting off the house I was paying for. And using my name to do it. This wasn't just betrayal. This was calculated exploitation. And I was done playing victim. It was time to make a move. When I walked out of the legal aid clinic that afternoon, something had changed in me. For years, I'd believed the only way to honor my mother was to hold the family together. But now I realized the only thing I'd been holding was a rope they were using to hang me with. Dad had forged my name. Lily had burned through money that was supposed to be shared. And all the while I was quietly drowning. But no more. Now I had leverage. I had proof. And I had Patricia Hargrove, a woman who looked like she could tear apart a courtroom with just a glance. She sat across from me in her office and asked, "How far are you willing to go?" I stared at her, the weight of 4 years in my chest. "All the way," I said. And I meant it. Step 1. Legal maneuvering. Patricia filed a formal complaint with the mortgage lender on my behalf, citing forged documents and illegal co-borrower status. That immediately triggered a freeze on the foreclosure process, temporarily halting the bank's ability to move forward. Then came the big one, a cease and desist letter to Dad, demanding he stop representing himself as sole owner of the lake house. We included copies of Mom's will, proof of rental income he'd hidden, and evidence of the forged signature. The letter was clear. "You have misrepresented ownership of jointly inherited property, committed potential financial fraud, and breached the legal rights of your son. Further legal action will be pursued if restitution is not initiated immediately." The message was more than legal. It was personal. And I knew Dad would feel the sting. Step 2. The financial trigger. With the help of the university's financial office, I applied for multiple grants. Now that I wasn't wasting my income on the lake house, I qualified for nearly $8,000 in emergency aid and scholarships. I also picked up a paid research position in the engineering department. I no longer worked weekends at the tire shop or did landscaping for snooty rich people. I had time now. Time to focus. To heal. And a plan. Meanwhile, Lily's calls kept coming. Her messages shifted from pleading to angry. "You think you're better than us now? Dad says you're ruining the family. You're such a cold, selfish bastard." But with every message I felt more free. I didn't respond. And then one day I got a text from Uncle Ray. "Uncle Ray. Just FYI, your dad is trying to sell the lake house privately. Thought you should know." I stared at the screen, breath stuck in my throat. Of course he was. Foreclosure had been paused. But he wanted to cash out before we could act legally. Maybe to cover Lily's debts. Maybe to protect himself. But that house wasn't his to sell. And this time I was ready. Step 3. The quiet setup. Patricia filed a temporary restraining order on the sale of the lake house, citing the inheritance clause and fraudulent mortgage. Dad was served at work. The same place he had once bragged about building a legacy. I wasn't there to see his face, but I wish I had been. We sent formal notice to the property management firm, informing them of a dispute in ownership and ordering a freeze on all rental income going to Dad. Then the final nail. We filed a motion to recover financial damages, listing the $68,000 I'd spent supporting the lake house, plus emotional distress and legal costs. It was real now. No more phone calls. No more texts. Just court dates. Just truth. Just consequences. Step 4. Strategic silence. I didn't say a word to Lily or Dad. But I knew what was happening behind the scenes. Lily's lifestyle was crashing. She had sold her BMW at a loss. The apartment was gone. Rumor had it she was crashing on a friend's couch in Queens, doing social media gigs that barely paid for Uber Eats. And Dad? His construction company had lost its biggest client after word got around about the legal freeze. He started laying off workers. Men I used to know, men who showed up at my mom's funeral with dust on their boots and tears in their eyes. It was all coming apart. But not because of me. Because of them. I had warned them for years. I had begged, paid, sacrificed. Now I was reclaiming what they never gave me. Power. Respect. Justice. I met with Patricia again one rainy Thursday afternoon. She wore a thin smile as she slid a new folder toward me. Inside, documentation that the trust fund Lily had been given was funded not just by Mom's insurance, but also by cashing out Dad's retirement savings and a second mortgage on his own home. He had burned everything for her, and she had torched it all like kindling. Patricia folded her hands. If this goes to trial, we'll likely win. Especially with your mother's will, the forged documents, and financial records. But there's another option. I raised an eyebrow. She continued, if you want poetic justice, and I think you do, we could offer them a settlement with terms that humiliate them. I leaned back, heart pounding. Go on. It was a quiet morning when the letter was delivered. Patricia had written every word herself, with a precision that made it feel more like a scalpel than a legal document. We offered Dad a settlement, not because we had to, but because we wanted him to squirm with every clause. The terms were simple. 1. He would sign over 50% of the lakehouse to me, retroactively recognizing my rightful inheritance. 2. He would publicly admit to misusing my financial contributions by issuing a notarized apology attached to the settlement. 3. He would pay $35,000, just over half of what I'd put into the house, within 6 months or risk full litigation. 4. He would transfer the remaining trust fund balance from Lily's account to a new joint escrow, which I would oversee and determine if it could be used toward repairing the lakehouse or settling debts. 5. If he refused, we would proceed with full civil charges, and I would initiate a criminal forgery case regarding the mortgage document. No threats. Just facts. Dad had 7 days to respond. I'd expected resistance, maybe an angry phone call or some kind of manipulative guilt trip. Instead, what I got was silence, which to me was worse than any explosion. It meant he was afraid and thinking. Lily, on the other hand, did not stay silent. 3 days after the letter was sent, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I picked it up without thinking. You're disgusting. Her voice cracked as she spat the words. You know he's sick, right? You're stressing him out. He's got high blood pressure and barely sleeps. I stayed calm. Then maybe he shouldn't have forged my name or stolen my inheritance. You think you're some kind of martyr? She shouted. You think this makes you better? No, I said coldly. I think it makes me free. There was silence on the line for a few seconds before she hung up. That night, I received a scanned copy of Dad's signed acceptance of the settlement, with minor edits to the apology clause. Patricia rejected the edits. You either admit what you did, she told his lawyer flatly, or we'll let the court do it for you. 2 days later, we got a full signature. And that was the beginning of the unraveling. First move, public shame. We filed the settlement with the county clerk, making it public record. I didn't share it. I didn't post about it. But I knew Lily would see it. I knew Dad's construction rivals would see it. I knew his creditors and former employees would read every word of that notarized admission. I, Richard Weston, acknowledged that I misused my son Jeffrey's financial support over a period of 4 years, and falsely represented him in mortgage agreements without consent. I apologize for the harm caused. The man who once lectured me about being a man had just admitted, in legal ink, that he lied and stole from his own son. Poetic justice in Times New Roman. Second move, liquidation. Dad couldn't come up with the $35,000 in cash. Instead, Patricia offered an option. He could liquidate the remaining furniture, boat equipment, and dock gear from the lakehouse, all of which were under disputed ownership anyway, and apply the proceeds toward the payment. I helped coordinate the estate sale. Yes, I stood there watching as Lily's designer patio set, Dad's fishing equipment, and the jet skis he couldn't afford to maintain, were hauled away by strangers with trailers. $14,300 in total proceeds. Applied directly to my account. He still owed $20,700, but that wasn't my problem anymore. The courts would handle the rest if he failed to follow through. And judging by the silence that followed, I knew it was finally sinking in. I wasn't coming to save them this time. Third move, the house. With my newly recognized ownership in place, Patricia and I initiated talks with the foreclosure department. I presented a proposal to refinance my half of the home, separately, and offered to buy out the other 50% if the mortgage debt was cleared. They accepted the proposal tentatively, pending proof of financial capability. I worked with a scholarship foundation, a work-study income breakdown, and a local engineering firm where I had just accepted an internship. The math was tight but possible. With help from a small grant and co-signing support from Uncle Ray, who had quietly become my biggest supporter, I got pre-approval to assume full ownership of the lakehouse. Not just rescue it, own it. I didn't tell Dad. He didn't deserve to know. Meanwhile, Lily crumbled. She'd burned through nearly every dollar. The remaining $40,000 in her trust? Seized under the escrow agreement to partially settle her debts and apply to house repair costs. She tried to fight it but failed. Patricia was airtight with the paperwork. She was evicted from her apartment. Her car? Repossessed. Her social media accounts? Private then deleted. Rumors swirled that she'd started working at a chain makeup store, cashier. Part-time. From private jets to barcode scans in 3 months. And still, she posted cryptic quotes about betrayal and family snakes. But the truth? She'd eaten the fruit of her own selfishness. And the tree had fallen. I went back to the lake house alone in early spring. The snow was melting. The dock was splintered and crooked. The once pristine house had paint peeling and a roof still needing repairs. But for the first time in years it didn't feel like a prison. It felt like mine. Mine to rebuild. Mine to protect. Mine to honor my mother, not by preserving the broken family that came after her, but by finally choosing myself. By all accounts it should have been over. The settlement was signed. The property was under my name. Lily had burned through her trust. And Dad? He was finally facing the cost of his delusions. But as life has a way of doing, it wasn't done with me yet. It came in a faded, cream-colored envelope, delivered to my apartment 2 weeks after I finalized the paperwork on the lake house. No return address. No stamp. Just my name, Jeffrey Weston, written in looping cursive I hadn't seen in over 6 years. My mother's handwriting. I froze. For a moment I just stood in the kitchen, the envelope trembling in my hands. Oh, she'd been gone since I was 17. She'd died quietly, painfully, and way too young. Cancer. Dad had told us there was no will beyond the one already filed. No letters. Nothing else left behind. He lied. I opened the envelope carefully, breath caught somewhere between my ribs. Inside was a handwritten letter, dated 3 weeks before she passed. It had yellowed slightly around the edges, but her words were as clear as if she were sitting right beside me. My dearest Jeff, if you're reading this, it means your father did not give you this letter when I asked him to. That alone breaks my heart. I know how much I've asked of you these last few years. I know how often you've had to grow up too quickly, too quietly. And I need you to know, I saw everything. I saw how you looked after Lily. How you held Dad together when he fell apart. How you sacrificed, always, for everyone but yourself. And I want you to stop. Not because you're wrong to love them, but because you deserve to live too. If I've gone, I want you to know, you are not obligated to fix them. Please remember that. The lake house was always meant to be your anchor, not your anchor chain. I told your father I wanted it split equally. But I also told him something I never put in the will. If Lily ever failed to respect the gift, the entire property should go to you. I hope you never need this letter. But if you do, then I trust you'll know what to do next. All my love, Mom. I sat there, stunned, as tears welled up in my eyes for the first time in what felt like years. She knew. Long before I'd hit my limit. Long before I'd drawn the line. She saw it coming. And she tried to warn him. Tried to protect me. But Dad buried her words along with her body. How many other things had he kept from me? Who had given me that letter? Had he kept it hidden all these years? I turned the envelope over, and there, barely visible in the crease of the flap, was a small blue ink stamp. Attorney Charles Emery, Family Law. I remembered that name. Mom's old estate attorney. The one Dad said retired before finalizing everything. Apparently he hadn't retired. He'd been shut out. I looked him up immediately. Sure enough, he was still practicing, semi-retired, doing consulting work out of a small office and bar. I drove there the next day without calling ahead. When I walked in and said my name, his assistant's eyes widened. Oh, wait right here. A few minutes later, a thin, silver-haired man in a vest walked into the lobby. Jeffrey Weston, he said. You look just like your mother. Then he led me to a back office, and handed me a locked file. This was supposed to be given to you on your 21st birthday, he said. Your mother insisted. But your father revoked access right after her passing. Claimed he would handle everything himself. I had no legal standing to stop him without a court order. So I waited. I always knew you'd come one day. Inside the file was a supplemental trust document, unsigned but written by my mother and prepared for finalization before her passing. It detailed a clause that never made it into the final will, a reversionary clause. It stated that if either child misused their inheritance, their share of any joint property would revert to the other child at the discretion of the family executor. The executor she named? Uncle Ray. My jaw dropped. This wasn't just symbolic. It was a legal mechanism that could allow for full ownership transfer of the lakehouse if enforced in probate court. Ray hadn't known. No one had. But now I had every piece. I met with Uncle Ray that weekend. We sat on the deck of his place, overlooking the hillside. I told him everything. The forged mortgage. The trust abuse. Lily's spending. Dad's mismanagement. The hidden letter. He didn't speak for a long time. When he finally did, his voice cracked. I failed her too, he whispered. Your mom. I should have pushed harder. I shook my head. You were grieving. We all were. He nodded slowly, then looked me dead in the eye. Whatever you want to do, Jeff, I'll back it. With his signature and the original document now in my hands, Patricia filed an amendment petition to the county probate court. The claim? That based on undisclosed final wishes and abuse of trust funds, Lily's share of the property should be transferred entirely to me under the guidance of the named executor. We had the letter. We had the document. We had Ray. And we had Lily's own Instagram stories of reckless spending, all archived and time-stamped. A hearing was scheduled for the following month. Dad didn't show. Lily did, looking pale, tired, and nothing like the glossy girl she used to parade online. She tried to argue. But the judge barely let her finish before ruling in my favor. The lakehouse was mine. Fully. Legally. Irrevocably. The final nail was driven. The daughter they gave everything to was left with nothing. And the son they took everything from? He walked away with the one thing that mattered most. The lakehouse was quiet again. No loud music. No beer bottles littering the porch. No echoes of Lily's fake laughter. No slammed doors or arguments over who was covering groceries this time. Just the wind off the lake brushing against the shore. Birds nesting in the chimney. The slow creak of wood, like the house itself was exhaling after years of chaos, was mine now. Not just on paper. In truth. In peace. It took me weeks to walk through every room and let go of the ghost versions of my past. My mom sitting on the couch with tea, my younger self curled up by the fire with a physics textbook, Lily running barefoot down the dock before she became someone else. I had to let it all wash over me. And then, let it go. Aftermath. Lily never apologized. She vanished from my life entirely after the court ruling. Uncle Ray told me she moved 2 states over, picked up a waitressing job, and was living in a shared apartment with 4 roommates. Her trust was gone. Her reputation burned. The friends she once bragged about? Long gone. Dad didn't fare much better. The construction business collapsed. He declared bankruptcy 2 months after our final settlement check cleared. He sold his home, defaulted on 2 credit cards, and ended up in a rental half the size of his old place. He sent me a letter once. No return address. Read. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I want you to know I didn't do it to hurt you. I truly believed I was doing what your mother wanted. I was wrong. About a lot. Maybe everything. I didn't reply. Because he was right. He was wrong about everything. And some apologies arrived too late to change anything at all. A new chapter. By the time summer rolled in, I'd finished the repairs to the roof and dock. I used what was left of the property liquidation funds to refurbish the heating system and insulate the basement. That same summer, I hosted my first gathering in years. Just a handful of people. Uncle Ray, my academic advisor Dr. Morales, my 2 closest friends from the engineering program, and my girlfriend Nadia, who had stood by me through the thickest of it. We grilled burgers, played cards, told stories under the stars. For the first time, the house felt like it was breathing again. Not under the weight of broken promises or manipulated loyalty, but under something new. Healing. Legacy. In the back of my mother's closet, one I hadn't touched in years, I found a small wooden box. Inside was a velvet pouch, and in that pouch was a silver pendant she always wore but I'd never seen after she passed. Etched on the back were 5 words. Protect what matters the most. That wasn't the lake house. It wasn't even the money. It was me. My dignity. My future. My freedom. She knew I'd need the reminder. So I wear it now. Around my neck. Under my shirt. Every day. Not as a trophy, but as armor. Because I learned something through all this. Sometimes your worst betrayal doesn't come from enemies. It comes from those who say they love you most. And surviving that? That's not just strength. That's rebirth. Final reflection. I don't think I'll ever fully forgive them. But I'm not angry anymore. What they lost was never about money or property. They lost access to me. To the part of me that loved them unconditionally. That stayed loyal even when they didn't deserve it. And in the end, they didn't just lose a house. They lost the only person who ever held it all together. Me. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.